Imagine just walking into a major corporate headquarters, completely unannounced.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like no appointment whatsoever.
Right. No inside connections, nothing. Just a cassette tape in your hand and a whole lot of nerve.
I mean, today, security has you escorted out before you even reach the elevators.
Exactly. But back in 1969, a young musician named Tony Wilson and his part-time roadie actually did exactly that.
And it paid off.
It really did. 15 minutes later, they were literally sitting on a couch with John Lennon.
It sounds like a Hollywood script, but it highlights this fundamental truth about how industries actually operate. Versus how we're taught they operate.
Right, because we are totally trained to look for this rigid flow chart. Like you find a manager, you record a polished demo, you submit it to a label, and then you wait for permission.
And we crave that structure, right? Because it implies fairness.
Yes.
Like if you just follow the steps, you automatically get the reward. But today, we are throwing that flow chart completely out the window.
Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to really explore the wild, serendipitous, and honestly, often ruthless realities of the music business.
It's a crazy story.
It is. We're pulling from an excerpt of Kenny Denton's memoir, There Ain't No Rules in Rock and Roll, and we're focusing specifically on the founding of the band Hot Chocolate.
And for anyone listening, whether you're, trying to get a startup funded or trying to publish a book or just trying to get your boss to notice a new project, this story is an absolute masterclass.
Oh, 100%.
It really breaks down the architecture of gatekeeping, the hidden mechanics of creative ownership, and what actually happens when you bypass the no to find the yes.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We need to establish who Tony Wilson was before the fame.
Right.
So Tony is the co-founder of Hot Chocolate. He's actually turning 89 this year, living pretty quietly in Trinidad with his partner, Delia.
But back in the late 1960s, he was a young guy who took this massive leap of faith.
Yeah, he had just relocated from Trinidad to Brixton in South London. He was writing songs, trying to piece a band together, and basically staring up at the massive walled garden of the British music industry.
And I mean, when you're standing outside a walled garden, you're naturally looking for someone holding a key.
Obviously.
And for Tony, that key holder appeared to be a producer named Derek Lawrence.
Right, Derek Lawrence.
Yeah, and Derek had legitimate industry weight at the time. He had produced the first 3 albums for Deep Purple through his connections with Ritchie Blackmore.
Wow.
So to a newcomer like Tony, Derek totally represents undeniable access.
But the memoir paints a very specific picture of Derek's working style, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. He's described as a very character-driven producer.
Which means what, exactly?
Well, he wasn't the guy meticulously adjusting the EQ on a snare drum for hours. He was the guy propping his feet up on the mixing desk, spinning these elaborate stories about his industry conquests, and really just trading heavily on his proximity to power.
Right. And he leverages that perceived power to make a highly lucrative sounding promise to the band.
Yes.
He tells Tony that he will finance studio time for the band to lay down a track. And the kicker...
This is the crazy part.
He promises to take that recording straight to his good friend John Lennon over at Apple Records.
Which is, the ultimate carrot to dangle in 1969.
Totally. So Tony and his bandmates prep the material. They show up to the recording studio on the scheduled day, and Derek is nowhere to be found.
Nowhere. Complete radio silence.
It's a total ghosting.
It really is. And it's the defining maneuver of a certain type of industry middleman.
Yep.
They trade in the currency of access, but the moment that access requires them to actually put their own reputation or capital on the line, they just evaporate.
And I push back on this constantly when talking to creatives or young professionals. I always wonder, why do so many talented people let these talkers stall their progress?
It's frustrating to watch.
It is. It seems like human nature to just pack up the gear, go home, and wait for the gatekeeper to reschedule. It's like that one guy on LinkedIn who promises to introduce you to the CEO, but entirely ghosts you when it counts.
That is the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And honestly, people freeze because they mistake the gatekeeper for the gate itself.
Oh, wow. That's a great way to put it.
Right. They assume that without Derek, the studio is literally just an empty room. But what's fascinating here is that Tony and his friend Errol...
Who's actually just their part-time roadie at this stage, right?
Yeah, literally just a roadie. They refuse to freeze. They're already in a rented studio. The microphones are hot.
Just make a pivot.
A massive pivot. They decide to record their own reggae-infused rendition of John Lennon's Give Peace a Chance. entirely on their own.
They stop waiting to be discovered and just do the work.
Exactly.
And then eventually, Derek resurfaces.
Naturally,
he listens to the track and he absolutely hates it.
he completely dismisses the reggae arrangement and immediately starts peddling excuses.
Yeah, he claims Lennon is suddenly out of the country, the tape has to go on the back burner, basically trying to put Tony right back in the waiting room.
And Derek's usefulness literally drops to zero in that moment. He proves he's a bottleneck, not a bridge.
Right.
And this is where the band makes a decision that alters the entire trajectory of their lives. They decide to completely bypass the bottleneck.
Since the gatekeeper failed them, they just skip the gate, they take the physical tape, and they walk directly to Apple's headquarters at 3 Savile Row in London.
Just walk right up.
They knock on the door with just a dash of hope, no appointment, no manager, no Derek Lawrence to smooth the way.
Which is wild. Apple Corps was notoriously eccentric as a company, but it was still the epicenter of the biggest band on the planet. Walking in cold off the street is just an astonishing breach of industry protocol.
And yet, 15 minutes later, Tony and Errol are sitting on a sofa across from John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
It's almost unbelievable.
I try to map this onto today's landscape. Like, here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. If you email a demo to a record executive now, a filter sends it straight to spam.
Oh, absolutely.
If you DM them, it sits in a hidden request folder forever. But here, the physical audacity of literally standing in the lobby forced an interaction. Does sheer audacity still work like this?
I think so.
Yeah.
The mediums have certainly evolved, but the underlying psychology, that remains exactly the same.
How so?
Well, decision makers today are heavily insulated by layers of assistance and, digital filters designed specifically to keep people out.
Right.
But when someone breaches those layers through sheer unorthodoxy, it often commands a strange sort of respect. I mean, Lennon didn't have security throw them out.
He didn't.
He was intrigued enough to actually press play on their tape.
And he listens. But then he pauses the tape and asks them a very pointed question. He asks, why did you change the lyrics?
And this is a super critical juncture. Most people, if they were sitting in front of a literal Beatle, would invent some pretentious avant-garde justification for altering the lyrics to a global anthem.
Oh, for sure. It was an artistic choice about the duality of man or something.
Exactly. But Tony just gives him the absolute, unvarnished truth.
He looks at Lennon and says, honestly, we couldn't quite decipher the original lyrics from your record, so we just improvised our own.
And Lennon completely lights up at that. He just appreciates the utter lack of pretense. So he smiles and asks them what the name of their band is.
And Errol has to admit they don't even have one yet.
Right. So Lennon tells them to go out into the hallway, find a secretary getting a coffee, and just ask her to name them.
Which they do. They walk out, ask the receptionist, she looks the two of them up and down, and just blurts out, hot chocolate.
Amazing.
They take it back into the office. John and Yoko suggest tacking band onto the N, and the hot chocolate band is officially born.
And Lennon immediately validates the whole relationship.
Yes, he invites them to play their newly recorded version of Give Peace a Chance at a Plastic Ono Band gig at the Lyceum Ballroom.
Which naturally triggers an immediate panic attack for Tony and Errol.
Because it's literally the only song they know.
Right. They don't have a set list. They don't have anything else prepared.
But John casually reassures them. He's like, don't worry, there are plenty of other acts on the bill. You only need to play the one song.
And the track actually gets released on Apple Records under catalog number 18. It is a textbook Cinderella story.
It really is. But, and this is a big but, the problem with relying on a single gatekeeper, even if that gatekeeper happens to be John Lennon, is that if their house collapses, you are immediately back out on the street.
That's the danger.
And shortly after this, internal disputes tear Apple apart, the Beatles break up, and the label effectively shutters. So the high of the Apple Records era abruptly ends.
The fairy tale is over.
Yeah, the band is thrust right back into the harsh reality of finding a new deal.
Which leads them to cross paths with a highly successful producer named Micky Most.
Right.
Micky scoops them up for his RAK label. And Micky is really the antithesis of the whole Apple ethos.
How would you describe his style?
He is a pure commercial operator. His job is to manufacture pop hits. And his very first executive decision is to truncate their name. He strategically drops the word band to make it punchier.
Just hot chocolate.
Exactly.
And you really can't argue with his initial results. This pivot to pop brings massive success. They go on to have 10-hit singles under RAK.
Oh, it was incredibly lucrative.
Tony and Errol basically transition into this powerhouse songwriting duo. They're penning tracks for acts like Mary Hopkin, Herman's Hermits, and Julie Felix.
They're generating serious revenue.
But generating revenue within a corporate structure often requires sacrificing artistic identity, right?
Always.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the classic clash between artistic identity and commercial packaging.
Yeah.
A label executive like Micky Most looks at a group of musicians and tries to identify the absolute most marketable asset. He decides that the band shouldn't be presented as a democratic collective.
He wants a clear focal point.
Right. He wants a singular, easily identifiable face for the brand, and he decides that face is Errol.
Which completely rewrites the band's internal dynamic, because Tony actually sang lead vocals on their early hits like Love is Life, and even later on a 1974 track called You'll Always Be a Friend.
He was a primary voice.
But Micky relentlessly pushes to make Errol the undisputed frontman, effectively sidelining Tony and the rest of the group into the visual role of a mere backing band.
And from Micky's perspective, as a label head, this is just basic brand management.
Right, it's efficient.
Exactly. It's cheaper and easier to promote one frontman on magazine covers and TV appearances than it is to promote 5 equal members. It consolidates his marketing spend.
Makes sense on a spreadsheet.
But for the musicians actually writing the songs, it creates this profound disconnect, between the visual representation of the band and the collaborative reality of the actual music.
And Tony believed they were capable of much more serious, substantial material, while Micky just viewed them as a straightforward pop commodity.
Exactly.
And that commercial-first philosophy didn't just dictate where they stood on stage, it directly impacted how their biggest hit was handled and who actually got the credit for their signature sound.
Which brings us to the release of You Sexy Thing.
Yes. Arguably the song that defines their entire legacy, but when they recorded it, Micky Most completely dismissed it.
He really did.
He thought it was filler, so he released it as a mere B-side to a track called Blue Night.
And we probably need to explain the physical mechanics of the vinyl era here, just to understand why this matters so much.
Yeah, go for it.
So a record literally had 2 sides. The A-side was the track the label spent all their money promoting to radio stations. It was the intended hit.
The moneymaker.
Right. The B-side was just the bonus track.
Mm.
And because labels viewed B-sides as throwaways that didn't really drive sales, standard contracts included a mechanical clause.
Ah, the fine print.
Always the fine print. This clause stated that royalties for a B-side were paid out at a significantly lower rate than the A-side.
But the public didn't care about the A-side in this case. You Sexy Thing catches fire organically. It becomes a massive cultural phenomenon.
Huge.
So here is where I get totally confused, and I know anyone listening who deals with contracts is wondering the same exact thing. If the B-side suddenly becomes a global multi-million-dollar revenue driver, how is it legal for the label to just keep paying the filler rate?
I know, it sounds wrong.
Doesn't the contract have to adjust to reflect the actual primary product being sold?
It doesn't have to adjust at all, and that is the brutal reality of contract law.
Wow.
Micky Most isn't breaking the law, he is strictly enforcing it.
Because he can.
Right. From his viewpoint, he took the initial financial risk of pressing the vinyl and funding the studio time. The band signed a document agreeing to a lower percentage for that specific track.
So when the song unexpectedly explodes?
Micky makes the highly dubious but legal decision to weaponize that outdated mechanical clause. He uses it to maximize his own profit margin. He has the legal leverage, so he uses it.
It's such a sobering lesson in how the fine print behaves when the money gets big.
Oh, definitely.
And the financial friction wasn't just limited to the royalty rates either. It extended to who was actually credited for creating the signature sound of hot chocolate.
The unsung heroes of the band.
Exactly. Tony firmly believed that their early hits only truly took off because of the incredibly memorable guitar riffs laid down by Harvey Hensley.
And those riffs were the sonic hook.
They were.
They were the element that elevated the tracks from standard pop to something totally unique. But Harvey Hensley remained sadly uncredited as a writer on those songs.
Which just feels entirely unjust. I mean, it's like inventing the smartphone, but your boss only pays you for a calculator, while the guy who actually designed the screen gets 0 credit.
That is a brilliant analogy.
Thank you.
It perfectly isolates the difference between a session player and a songwriter in the eyes of the music industry.
How does the industry actually view it?
Well, the industry recognizes the lyrics and the core melody as the song. If you invent a brilliant guitar riff that makes the song famous, but you didn't write the words or the vocal melody,
You're out of luck.
the contract basically views you as simply performing a service. You get a flat performance fee, while the credited songwriters collect the recurring royalties forever.
So what does this all mean for you listening? How do you protect your own you sexy thing when the people in charge don't see its value?
It's tough. This accumulation of slights, the sideline vocals, the B-side royalty trap, the lack of credit for core musical contributions, it finally forces a breaking point.
It has to. Tony realizes he cannot fix a system that is legally designed to exploit his work.
Right. So in 1976, he decides he's had enough of the artistic disconnect. He makes the pivotal decision to walk away from the band he co-founded.
He leaves to pursue a solo career with Albert Grossman's Bearsville label in the U.S.
And when he leaves, he attempts to take the rhythm section with him to start fresh.
But they don't go.
No, they assess the landscape and they choose to stay. They opt for the guaranteed paycheck and the stability of RAK Records over the risk of an unproven solo venture.
Which, is a completely understandable human choice. Security usually wins.
It does.
But the ultimate lesson in how this industry operates arrives nearly a decade later. We jump forward to 1985.
The final insult.
Yeah. Errol, the front man that Micky Most built the entire commercial identity around, finally decides he has had enough and he leaves the label.
And the remaining members of Hot Chocolate want to keep working. They plan to hire a new vocalist and continue touring and performing under the name they've spent 15 years building.
But Micky Most refuses to back them without Errol. He knows the mainstream commercial appeal just walked out the door. However, Micky, ever the pragmatist, amicably, tells the remaining members that he will allow them to part ways and continue using the name Hot Chocolate.
Oh, how generous of him.
Right. But there's a catch. He charges them a 10,000-pound exit fee for the privilege.
Unbelievable. This raises such an important question about leverage.
Because they built the equity in that name.
They put in a decade and a half of sweat equity. They wrote the music, they played the shows, they lived the life. But the incorporation documents they signed with RAK Records dictated who actually owned it.
The label?
The label owned the trademark. Sweat equity is a feeling. A trademark is a legal fortress.
And they had absolutely no other choice if they wanted to keep their careers alive, so they paid it.
They had to.
Let's take a breath and just look at the whole board here. We followed a young Tony Wilson leaving Trinidad, getting completely ghosted by an industry middleman, and having the sheer audacity to bypass security and walk into John Lennon's office.
And then we watched them write generational hits.
Only to get boxed in by B-side clauses, performance fee loopholes, and corporate trademark law.
The underlying current of this entire story really is leverage.
Yeah.
When they didn't have any, they bypassed the system entirely at Savile Row. But when they entered the formal system with Micky Most, they didn't fully understand the leverage they were signing away until the hits started charting.
Which means if you are an entrepreneur, a freelancer, or just an employee navigating a corporate structure right now, this is a terrifyingly relevant case study.
Oh, absolutely.
It is proof that having the audacity to shoot your shot is only the first step. The second step is realizing that your employer or your partners will strictly enforce the fine print the moment your work becomes highly valuable. Your sweat equity does not equal legal equity unless it is literally in the contract.
You really have to understand the mechanics of how your industry monetizes your output, or you will find yourself paying retail price for something you built from scratch.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to turn over in your mind today.
Let's hear it.
Think all the way back to that chaotic 15 minutes inside Apple headquarters. John Lennon stops the tape and asks Tony and Errol why they changed the lyrics to give peace a chance.
And Tony confesses that they simply couldn't figure out the original words, so they just made up their own.
Right. And years later, the band is forced to pay Micky Most 10,000 pounds to keep the name Hot Chocolate, a name that was casually handed to them for free by a receptionist getting a coffee.
Just a totally random moment.
Completely random. And they were only in that hallway asking that receptionist for a name because they originally failed to decipher John Lennon's lyrics correctly.
It's a domino effect.
If they had just perfectly covered the song like any competent standard band would have done, Lennon likely would have nodded, said nice job, and just moved on with his afternoon.
Wow. Yeah, he probably would have.
The entire legacy of Hot Chocolate, the iconic name, the meeting with the Beatles, all that decades of global success was born entirely out of a literal mistake.
That is wild to think about.
So here is the question for you. What if the mistake you are currently trying to hide is actually the exact thing that makes you undeniable?